The last time we talked about medicine in archaic Greece, the Italic school of medicine and philosophy, the cult of Asclepius. Today I shall talk a little on Hippocrates and a little on some aspects of history of Greece. Medicine in the 5th century was epitomized by Hippocrates. He was a great teacher, a great practitioner of medicine, and wrote a large number of books on the subject. Born, I think, in 460, he lived for 90 long years. It's not that he was the only great exponent of medicine at that time. There were many others like him. But for some reason, he shines out as the greatest and the best. He's called, as you know, the father of medicine. But that term was given to him not at the time when he practiced medicine. It came to him sometime in the medieval ages. I'm not quite sure who called him the father of medicine first, but the name has rightfully been his forever. Now, Hippocrates, as I said, was not the only medical practitioner at that time. There were many others, but he was about the best. Aristotle, for example, said he was the best and the greatest. Plato said that he could be compared to Phidias, the great sculptor who made the temples in Athens, on the Acropolis. Galen, the only big doctor in Roman times, said that he was the inventor of all things beautiful in the world. Mustn't forget that Hippocrates was in august company. He was there at the time of Pericles, the golden age of Greece. He had as his compatriots the great playwrights Sophocles, Euripides, Aristophanes. He had with him the great historian Thucydides, who wrote a beautiful book on the Peloponnesian War, second only to Herodotus. And also with Phidias, the great sculptor who sculpted the temples on Acropolis. Now, I told you that he was a great writer. It is believed that he wrote more than 100 books and 50 treatises. But current research has shown that a good deal of this work, titled Corpus Hippocraticus, has really been contributed to by a number of other physicians in that age and time. So it's worth remembering that. Another thing worth remembering is that Hippocrates is said not to have written a word. He would dictate to his disciples who would write down what he said. There were two other great human beings who never wrote. One was Socrates and the other was Christ. Well, what did Hippocrates do which made him stand out from all the others? First, he divorced all medicine from the gods. It was still believed that the gods could produce disease, and there were so many gods in Greece. He said, no, every disease has a natural cause, and gods have nothing to do with it. And this is particularly so for one dreaded disease, which was at that point in time always thought to have been produced by the gods, and that was epilepsy. He said, no, this has a natural cause, and according to him, it was due to the obstruction of phlegm in the breathing tubes. Obviously a wrong diagnosis, a wrong reason, but nevertheless he made that astute observation that epilepsy was also due to a natural cause. Now I can only tell you certain great principles of Hippocratic medicine. The first is medicine at the bedside. It is learned at the bedside, it is practiced at the bedside, and it is taught at the bedside. Listening to the patient, talking to the patient, touching and examining the patient. The use of your eyes, your ears, your nose, our sense of touch. That was his great contribution. Medicine was not to be learned through lectures, but at the side of the patient. It's the patient who teaches medicine. The second important thing he said was that it was not only that a doctor should cure a disease, he should look at the patient as a whole. The patient was more important than the disease. Compartmentalizing medicine, therefore, into numerous compartments of different body systems was not the thing that Hippocrates advocated. The third major thing that he said was nature heals, assist it. I think that is so important. Untimely interventions, unnecessary medication, when they are not necessary, is what Hippocrates said from day one, ever since he started practicing medicine. And the last thing that he said was the personality and the character of the physician must remain unblemished. Then only can the patient look up to him as a good doctor. Finally, he introduced the ethics of medicine, the Hippocratic oath, that embodied all that was to be done ethically in medicine. And believe you me, this is even more important now than what it was in Hippocratic times. I've often presided at a beautiful function at the JJ Hospital. When those who have recently passed out take the Hippocratic oath, it's a lovely function where each one who passes out has a candle in his hand. And I speak out sentence by sentence the Hippocratic oath, and they repeat it after me. I only hope they practice this after they have left that classroom. Now, I want to talk a little more about the history of Greece at this time, because it is so very important. Greece reached its pinnacle at the time of Pericles. That was in the early part of the 5th century. But then disaster struck. First there was the plague, which decimated the population. And then there was the Peloponnesian War. Pericles was blamed to some extent, and the Peloponnesian War didn't go well. He was asked to leave on filthy charges, but when they realized that there was no one better to lead them, they took him back. What was the Peloponnesian War? It was a fratricidal war between Athens and Sparta. Athens wanted to aggrandize itself by monopolizing trade routes in the Aegean Sea. Sparta was its previous enemy, objected to that. There was a war between Sparta and Athens. And Athens lost. Sparta won. Athens had a very good navy, a lot of money, but Sparta was excellent with regard to its army. Athens lost, and that was the beginning of the downfall of Athens. War changes everything. It changes the character of people who are defeated as also the people who have conquered and are successful. The victorious become extremely arrogant, and the defeated have a blemish in their character. The people of Athens, the democratic, aristocratic people of Athens, whose first objective was to serve the city, no longer was there. Everyone now felt that they should aggrandize themselves. It was money that they were after. Money again, the root of all evil, again in those times. They were honorable men in early days, they now lacked honor. There was corruption. The canker of a decline had started to arise right from that point in time. For a short while, Sparta ruled Athens. It sent some 24 people, they called them tyrants, to rule Athens. Ultimately, they were evicted, and Athens started to breathe again. Slowly, Athens recovered for a short while. And it recovered, remarkably enough, under the influence of the philosophers, namely Plato and Aristotle. Plato was for logic and reason, but Aristotle was a man of all seasons. Remarkably enough, he didn't really come from Greece, he came from Macedonia. But he was a great botanist. He studied medicine, he studied physics, he studied chemistry. He was also good in mathematics and in philosophy. So these two were the giants, intellectual giants of Greece. And their legacy has remained in the West and in fact all over the world right up to the present day. What happens to Greece next? Greeks now, it's amazing, I must mention this. Plato and Aristotle, great philosophers as they were, never once thought of unifying the city-states of Greece. Amazing, one thinks. They felt that the city-state was still the ideal way to preserve Hellenic civilization. It was left to Macedonia. Philip of Macedonia, who with his army forced the union of all city-states of Greece. And Alexander perpetuated that, his son. So under Philip and under Alexander, Greece came under Macedonia. They then called themselves Greeks and said that they were Greeks too, not really Macedonians. They may be Macedonians, but they were in every facet, every way, they were Greeks themselves. So the Greeks now comes under the suzerainty of Alexander. Alexander the Great conquers Persia, conquers the greater part of Asia right up to the Indus and even beyond. But what does he leave? Nothing. Nothing except anarchy. He has left no successor. His kingdom is carved up by his generals, the Seleucids, who control the eastern half, and the Ptolemies, who control the western half, namely Egypt. That's how it was. Did it benefit Greece? To an extent, yes. It improved the trade routes of Greece. It gave them greater power and greater money because of the improvement of trade rates. But that is about all. We now come to the end, to the decline of Greece. The decline of Greece, as I said, had started towards the end of the Periclean age. But it was most marked after the 2nd century BC. Rome was in the ascendancy. It was waiting at the border, wanting to pounce upon Greece. But a civilization such as that of Greece can never be extinguished. It can change its garb. It has changed its locale, but it continues to breathe. Greece, as it declined, however, left its legacy and its heritage to the greater part of the West and to the greater part of the world. Of course, Greece had many follies. It had these internecine wars, its great stress on individuality, its inability to reconcile the freedom and liberty of an individual with public order and public peace. But those who loved art and beauty, those who cherished freedom, and those who agreed to reason in life knew that this was indeed a great civilization. And they were, most of us, I think, would be able to forget these blemishes or ignore some of these blemishes. Like many, I ignore them. I can only think of some beautiful words in Greek. For example, of Sophocles, who said that the world has many wonders, but there is nothing more wonderful than man. Of Pericles, who said that the future ages will wonder at us as much as the present age is wondering at us now. look in through the haze of history and think of Hippocrates, who really started medicine in a right way, in the true way, in a way that is being carried on right at present. Therefore, the Greek philosophy, its wisdom, the beauty of its love, the beauty of its art, the beauty of its literature, of its poetry, and above all, the concept of the freedom of man in this world are indeed rich heritages that will nourish the fabric of civilization forever. I shall end by speaking 4 lines of a small poem. I can't remember the others, so I shall just speak one stanza to just end on a lighter and a pleasanter note. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless times and starry skies, and all's at best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes, thus tempered to the kind light which heaven to gaudy day denies. Goodbye.